Hi, everyone. This is Phil Travis here, and this week's lesson is briefly on the Persian Empire, but also I wanted to talk about Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism, which is still a religion that is alive in the world today, though it is a dying religion. There are fewer and fewer members of the Zoroastrian faith. It's a very hard faith to adopt as well, which doesn't help. Zoroastrians have also been persecuted significantly in places like Iran, which has not helped the religion. But Zoroastrianism was the religion of the ancient Persian Empire, which is also known as the Achaemenid Empire. And it's one of the most influential religions of the world. The Persian Empire, which you see pictured here, at its height, extended from areas around Afghanistan, which is the area of Bactria, as you see on the map, all the way over through Turkey, parts of Macedonia, northern Greece, and even Egypt. And it was centered largely in Iran, what is modern-day Iran. Now, the people of Iran today is a largely Islamic nation, and of course, the Persian Empire predates Islam by over 1,000 years. So, the founder of the Persian Empire, or the Achaemenid Empire, was Cyrus, or Cyrus the Great. And this is Cyrus's tomb, located at Pasargad, which was the capital that he created. Cyrus, Cyrus, the Persians, and the Medians were Indo-European speakers. They were Indo-European. Indo-Europeans came from the Eurasian steppes located to the north of the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. These individuals migrated into modern-day Pakistan and India. They migrated into Iran, modern Iran. They migrated into Anatolia, or modern Turkey. They migrated into Greece. They were influential in Western Europe. The Indo-Europeans were highly influential people. They were excellent equestrians, meaning horse riders, and that made them very effective and efficient warriors as well. The Persians and the Medians were contemporaries of the Aryans, which were the Indo-Europeans that migrated into the areas around the Indus River Valley, which is in today modern-day Pakistan and India. The leadership of Cyrus is really a leadership as a military leader. He's a pastoral individual, and he is a very powerful leader. And in a lot of respects, he constructed a highly simple tomb, as you see pictured here. He would conquer the Median Empire. He would conquer the Lydian Empire, and then most significantly, he conquered the Babylonian Empire. The Babylonian Empire was located largely in modern-day Iraq, and this is the New Babylonian Empire, sometimes called the Neo-Babylonians or the Chaldean Empire. And the Neo-Babylonians, these are the Babylonians of the Bible. They're not the first Babylonian Empire. The first Babylonians actually goes back to around about 2000 BCE. But these are the Babylonians of the Bible. So if you guys know your Bible stuff, then you would remember the story of King Nebuchadnezzar and the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and the fiery furnace. Well, the Neo-Babylonians, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, led the conquest of the remaining kingdom of Judah in Palestine, the Jewish people. And in this, they enslaved many of the Jewish people, and began what's called, from a biblical standpoint, the Babylonian captivity. And these individuals were, as you remember from the story from the Bible, were forced to worship Babylonian gods. They were forced to, in some cases, remain in captivity in Babylon. Cyrus, and this is highly significant, Cyrus ended the Babylonian captivity when Cyrus conquers Babylon in 539 and brings down the Neo-Babylonian empire. He begins an empire that was much more tolerant than the predecessor, the Neo-Babylonians. He allows the people, the Jewish people, to practice their faith. He allows them to return to their homeland if they so choose. And because of this, because of his ending of the Babylonian captivity, Cyrus begins a tradition in the Persian Empire in which there's a significant cultural sharing between Jewish people and Persian people. And of course, if any of you guys, again, if you know your Bible stuff, if you know the story of Ezra in the Bible, Ezra was a Jewish woman who was the wife of a Persian king. And so there's a tremendous amount of sharing that we believe that happened between the Babylonians and the Jewish people. And that was a very highly significant development when it comes to the development of a modern or the modern Abrahamic faiths. The Abrahamic faiths we're referring to as Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. The three Judeo faiths that are monotheistic, that focus largely on religion of salvation. We believe this comes from influence from the Persians. Cyrus ultimately dies in battle, fighting in a far-flung region of Scythia. But his contribution to the Persian Empire was absolutely not capable of being overstated. And here you see a map of the Persian Empire with, and you can see on the map, of course, the realm of Media that the Achaemenids, led by the Persians, would have conquered. And you see the far-off reigns of Bactria at its height, and of course down in the bottom in Persis, which is the height of the Persian realm. Of course, you see Pasargadae, which was the capital of Cyrus. And his successor, Darius, will move the capital to Persepolis, which is very nearby. His successor was Cambyses, or one of his successors was Cambyses II, who had a very controversial rule, but still expanded the empire significantly, most notably expanding the empire in Egypt. And it was believed that Cambyses might have been murdered in what was effectively a coup. There's some debate that Cambyses might have been an illegitimate ruler who had assumed leadership under a false pretense, proclaiming that he was an heir when in fact he was not. But his leadership in the Persian Empire is rather short-lived, and like I said, it is significant for his conquest of Egypt in 525 BCE and expanding the empire, but ultimately Cambyses is killed and is pushed out of power. His successor, who is depicted here in this relief, the stone relief, his successor was arguably the most significant of the Achaemenid or the Persian kings, and this I'm referring to Darius or Darius. And Darius had significant length rule, was famous for his conquests of Macedonia, northern India, and of course he was the king at the beginning of the Persian Wars. He also built a new capital at Persepolis and was known for his tolerance and flexibility as a ruler. And this as well, Darius was again a practicer of the Zoroastrian religion, and because of his flexibility as a ruler and his tolerance overall, Darius, we believe, was another facilitator of the sharing of ideas between Jewish people and Persian people. And as a result of this, the Judeo-Christian religions take on a number of characteristics of Zoroastrianism that we will talk about momentarily. This is an image of the tombs of some of the greatest of the Persian kings. Obviously not Cyrus. I already showed you Cyrus's tomb at Pasargadae. But these are the tombs that we believe to be the tombs of Darius. We also believe that the tomb of Xerxes is located here. But quite phenomenal structures built right into the stone. And this is a closer look at the stonework of these tombs and the resting places of some of the great kings. We believe kings like Darius are here at these locations. And this again is modern day Iran. Persepolis, of course, was the great capital of Darius and of the Persian Empire at its height. This is an artifact, a ruin from the capital. This is another look at what remains of the great capital at Persepolis. One of the really brilliant components of this empire, the Persian Empire, was how it was organized. A historian asked the question, in this time period, how do you organize such a massive empire? An empire that stretches from what is modern-day Afghanistan, Bactria at that time, over to areas of Greece and Macedonia, of Turkey, of Egypt, of modern Palestine, of modern Syria and Iraq and Iran. And there's a number of different ways to do this. Some, like the Assyrians, used divide and conquer. But many empires found that the most effective way to do this was to organize an empire around provinces, or satrapies, as they were called, or if you want to say states, and create a more tolerant and regulated system of rule. So in the Persian Empire, they created 23 provinces. They had standards taxation. The taxation was paid in silver. There were governors or satraps. And the way you keep the satraps in line, your governors in line, because it's a huge empire, and you have to remember, like today, you can get in a car and you can drive somewhere. You get in a plane and fly somewhere. At that time, it's very difficult for a leader who's ruling in Persepolis in modern-day Iran to keep his eye on what the satrap or the governor is doing in Egypt. And so the empire had certain spies called the eyes and the ears of the king, who would be stationed in covertly stationed in the provinces to keep an eye on the provinces. And these agencies had military forces, and they would conduct audits, if you will, to make sure that governors were not trying to exert an independence from the empire. Communication is also very significant, and for this reason, the Persian Empire built, and this again facilitates the expansion and influence of Zoroastrianism, and again helps to influence the development of characteristics of Judeo-Christian religions, or I should just say Abrahamic faith. The Abrahamic faiths, the Judeo religions, Islam, Christianity, and Judaism, are influenced significantly by the Persians. And one of the reasons is because they have a massive empire that is interconnected by a phenomenal system of roads. And most impressively, the Royal Road, which was some 1,600 miles long. It ran from modern-day Iran all the way to the edge of Turkey. And of course, along this road, there were staging points. There were couriers who used this road. The roads were kept safe. There were troops and military that was stationed along the road. And this allowed for the Persians to communicate and interconnect their empire. The military, likewise, was very, very sufficient. They had a cavalry and an infantry of some 10,000 people. Their navy was impressive, though it wasn't quite as impressive as we would see in the Persian Wars with the Greeks. It wasn't quite as impressive as the Greek navy, but still, they had a standing navy and they had a standing military. So here's another look. You can see the line in the middle from Susa all the way over to Sardis You can see in Lydia and Ionia, which is modern-day Turkey, you can see the extent of the royal road. And of course, you can see also further down by the Persian Gulf, you can see Pasargad, which was the capital of Cyrus, and Persepolis, the capital created by Darius in modern-day Iran. Now, the religion of Persia is very, very interesting. It's known as Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is a deeply influential religion. It was, we believe, to be the first religion of salvation. So what do we mean when we say religion of salvation? What we mean when we say a religion of salvation is a religion that offers that if one follows the creeds of the religion and lives life correctly, they receive a sort of salvation, an afterlife. It's a monotheistic religion as well, meaning there's a belief in one God. In Zoroastrianism, it was believed that sin was punished by a terrible hell, but the right living would be rewarded with an afterlife. There's a supreme God in Zoroastrianism, and this is the god of Ahura Mazda. There's also a devil in Zoroastrianism, and this is known as Angra Maniu. And interestingly, in Zoroastrianism, Zoroastrianism believes that God is effectively everything. And so, in a way, God actually makes up all of the good and all of the evil in the world. The God is a supreme monotheistic deity. So you can see how during the Babylonian captivity, as it was called, you can see the influence on Judaism or the Abrahamic faiths. You can see the influence on religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam today, in the sense that you have this concept of a supreme deity, a singular deity, a religion of salvation, hell and heaven. Okay? These are basic concepts that historians believe originally came from Zoroastrianism and were influential upon the development of the Abrahamic faiths, the Judaic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Zoroaster was the primary prophet of Zoroastrianism, and we believe he lived around 660 BCE, is around his period of life, but we're not positive on that. And the holy book is known as the Gathas. Again, Ahura Mazda is the supreme deity, pictured here in this image of the religion. And Angra Maniu is like the devil. Hell and punishment for Zoroastrianism is vivid and frightening. To give you an example, in Zoroastrianism, if a person was to have sex with a woman during menstruation, that was a taboo. Remember, in religion, taboos, the absolute forbidden. If a person was to participate in that taboo and have sexual relations with a woman while she was menstruating, it was deemed that a person would live for eternity in hell and would be forced, literally by having their mouth held open, to drink menstrual blood. I know that's gross to think about, but it was a vivid and frightening kind of hell. And so in that respect, you can see how it's a religion of salvation that promises salvation, but for sin, it promises extreme punishment. And these concepts were very influential on our Abrahamic faiths. Zoroastrianism is very interesting. It's a philosophy that focuses on the fundamental elements of existence. And in ancient times or classical times, philosophers and religions focused on the fundamental elements of earth, the land, air, the air we breathe, fire, and also water. And so as a result of this greatly influenced the practice of Zoroastrians. Maj priests, as a sacrifice, burn a sacred wood called sandalwood. Zoroastrians are extremely careful to not pollute the earth or the air or the water. And as a result of that, they have a unique way of dealing with the dead, and this is with the so-called Dakma well. When a person dies, Zoroastrians cannot simply discard the body by throwing it in the ground, because a Zoroastrian would say, well, that will pollute the earth. And so the tradition of death, with death for Zoroastrians, is that an individual's body is taken, it's cleaned, and it's fitted and dressed nicely, and then placed in what's called a Dakma well. And what you see in this image is an image of a Dakma well. And what happens in the Dakma well is the Dakma well is out in the desert, and the body is left out in the open on a slab of stone in the Dakma well. And the idea is that the birds, the buzzards, will come and they will feed on the body, and they will ultimately pick the bones clean. And after the bones are picked clean, the bones are then taken and removed. But it's done because this is a way of allowing the body to be taken care of without it polluting the sacred elements of the earth. The Persian Empire met its decline really during the Persian Wars, which were wars fought with the Greeks. And of course, if you've seen the movie 300, that's obviously a very Hollywood rendition of the Persian Wars. But the Persian Wars were really quite destructive for the ultimate fate of the empire. Xerxes, who is the successor of Darius, abandoned the religious and cultural tolerance and flexibility of Darius and Cyrus, and through his prosecution of the Persian Wars was ultimately dealt some crushing defeats at the Battle of Marathon and, of course, the naval battle of Salamis. I'm sorry, the Battle of Marathon was actually earlier during Darius's reign. I meant the Battle of Thermopylae and, of course, the Battle of Salamis. And, of course, Thermopylae ultimately was a Persian victory, but the Greeks, the Spartans that were at Thermopylae at the time, were able to hold off the Persians long enough for the Greeks to win the Athenians to win the great naval victory of Salamis and secure success for the Greeks in the Persian Wars. Ultimately, the Persian Empire collapses with the rise of Alexander the Great, who conquers the empire in 330 BCE. And Darius III, who is then the leader of the empire, was in a rather shameful manner was defeated by Alexander. Darius III tried to obtain treaties with Alexander. He tried to flee Alexander, and Alexander would have none of it. And ultimately, Alexander conquered Darius III, as Darius's people, ultimately, his soldiers began to mutiny against him. Nonetheless, we can see how influential, hopefully, you can see how influential the Persian Empire was in influencing, through Zoroastrianism, the development of Abrahamic faiths like Judaism, Christianity, and ultimately, through those two, Islam. Now, Islam doesn't come around until the 7th century, so literally almost 1,000 years after the time of Darius. But Islam was influenced by Judaism and Christianity, and through these religions, these become monotheistic religions of salvation that have tremendous influence and tremendous sharing from ultimately the older religion of Zoroastrianism.